I'm here at Woodlawn North Cemetery in Miami, just off of Calle Ocho. I'm in front of the grave of Carlos Prio Socarras, who was president of Cuba from 1948 to 1952. In 1952, he was overthrown during a coup d'etat led by Fulgencio Batista, who had been president before, but also had been the head of the military during much of the 1930s. Prio had a very distinguished political career. He had been one of the leaders of the revolution in the early 1930s against Gerardo Machado. From there, he was basically catapulted to the political sphere in Cuba. He became a senator, he became prime minister, also minister of labor, held different positions. He was one of the founders of the Auténtico Party, and was one of its key figures during the 1930s and really into the 1940s. During Prio's administration, there was a lot of democratic expansion, an expansion of Cuba's democratic system. He pushed through Congress the laws that complemented the Constitution of 1940. So basically, the laws that were necessary to make the Constitution work and actually function. He also opened up Cuba, and this was something that had been going on before, but during this period, he opened up or helped facilitate the passage of exiles from different countries like the Dominican Republic, like Venezuela, who were themselves fighting dictatorships, and allowed them to come into Cuba and help them kind of set up there. And a lot of those individuals, like Juan Bosch from the Dominican Republic, were instrumental in the Prio administration, and really worked very closely with Prio. There was a lot of political, ideological affinity between the Auténtico government and other similar movements in the region that were fighting for democracy. So Cuba was kind of a haven for that democratic promotion in an era where a lot of the countries in Latin America were headed by dictatorships. Prio eventually comes into exile after he's overthrown by Batista. He comes to Miami. He continues the fight against Batista. At first, when Castro comes to power, he's on Castro's side, but then continues the fight against Castro really until his death in 1977 in Miami Beach. So a lot of history from this individual, this Cuban president, not only history of Cuba, but also history of Latin America, and particularly political history, not only of Cuba, of Latin America, but also here in South Florida, a piece of that history. And we've talked in different videos about Prio and how the Prio's legacy is very much in South Florida, particularly in the period where he was working to fight for a renewed democracy in Cuba in the 1950s and going forward. So again, here is his last resting place, and again, a piece of Latin American political history, Cuban political history, so close to us here in South Florida.